Hi, everyone. My name is Amy James. I'm going to kick us off. Ellen and I will be presenting. I'm going to start sharing my screen real quick. Make sure that everyone is able to see. So thumbs up if you can see. Everybody's good. Okay, cool. All right. So hello, my name is Amy James, and I'm the online librarian for education and information literacy at Baylor University. I'm joined today by my colleague, Ellen Filgo, who is the director of our liaison program. And we're excited to join you all today for a discussion on AI in academic libraries, teaching and learning. So during our time together, we're going to be talking about teaching about generative AI, ChatGPT, and the ACRL framework for information literacy. We'll give a quick overview of our article from CNRL News. We'll talk about using generative AI in one-shot instruction versus in semester-length courses, and we'll touch a little bit on using generative AI in online instruction. We'll also talk about engaging with faculty around teaching and generative AI, and we will also discuss a few other generative AI tools that we've discovered that we really like.
So the most important thing that we want to mention at the outset of this presentation is that teaching about generative AI is a part of critical digital literacy, which develops active and engaged thinkers and creators in digital environments. It's more than just teaching skills, but it involves a range of reflective, ethical, and social perspectives on digital activities. And one of the things, what we specifically want students to know about generative AI and tools like ChatGPT, first of all, they need to know what it is and what it's not. And so what it is an algorithm trained on a large language model that can create natural language output. And what it is not is something that thinks. And the other thing that's important to teach students about as a part of critical digital literacy is how to understand and evaluate the problems that come along that are surrounding generative AI currently. One of the things, so I want to give a little bit of an overview now about our article that was published in CNRL News last month. One of the main things we wanted to do in this article was to consider what some of those possibilities and problems with generative AI and ChatGPT are using the lens of the ACRL framework for information literacy. So in the article, we looked at the framework and tried to see where the frames and the knowledge practices and/or dispositions might address the concept of generative AI, even if it's not named directly. So in the next few minutes, I want to give a kind of quick overview of what we highlighted from the framework, acknowledging that there's a lot more in there. There's definitely other places in the framework where one can see how generative AI connects with the frames. And what we found was that in some places, the framework enables us to embrace ChatGPT as an exciting new tool that adds value to information literacy instruction. And in other places, the framework's discussions of, for example, evaluating authority and examining bias shines light on some of the inherent flaws of ChatGPT. Overall, our analysis confirmed to us that, yes, there should be instruction about generative AI and ChatGPT in the library instruction classroom. So let's take a look specifically what we found within each frame. So within authority is constructed and contextual, we noted the disposition, learners assess content with a skeptical stance. And here is where we need to caution students about the content that ChatGPT produces, because ChatGPT is built on a predictive language modeling, what that means is it generates natural sounding language, not necessarily factual language. Within information creation as a process, we noted that learners accept the ambiguity surrounding the potential value of information creation expressed in emerging formats or modes. And to us, this was direct confirmation to us that ChatGPT has a place in the library instruction classroom, because as we stated before, teaching about generative AI is a part of teaching critical digital literacy. Within information has value, we note that the knowledge practice of giving credit to the ideas of others through citation. And as many librarians are increasingly aware, ChatGPT does not create correct citations, but rather what people are calling hallucinations. However, we have recently noticed in our experiments with it that in our explorations with ChatGPT that it's getting better at acknowledging that it can't generate accurate references if you ask it to do it. And one more thing about the frame information has value. We didn't mention this in the article, but it's interesting to know that the main description of information has value states that legal and socioeconomic interests influence information production and dissemination. And I think as we've seen large amounts of capital flowing into AI tools and products and into their creation, that, in this last year, that it's super important for students to understand that the market for AI is expected to reach $2 trillion by 2030, which is a 20% or 20 times increase from today. In the next frames, so in the frame research as inquiry, we found a lot of positive, actually. One, knowledge practice states that learners deal with complex research by breaking complex questions into simple ones, and limit the scope of their investigations. And here's where we have found ChatGPT to be really helpful as we work with students. It can help students find search terms or synonyms or narrow down their topic. For example, especially I think with beginner students, it can help them kind of scaffold their skills, enabling them to accomplish this task more confidently in the future. The frame scholarship as conversation includes the disposition that students see themselves as contributors to scholarship rather than only consumers of it. And clearly, students using ChatGPT to generate an essay to turn in shortchanges themselves as contributors to scholarship and undermines the development of their own authentic academic voice. However, we do also acknowledge that ChatGPT can absolutely be a supportive resource for students as they're writing. It can help them we've used it ourselves in our own. They can gain confidence in their writing and their academic voice. So we do, however, need to teach students how to use it properly. And so that's just one sort of way that we're kind of divided on this frame. So one more confirmation that we should be teaching about generative AI comes in the frame searching and strategic exploration, where the description of the frame is aimed squarely at librarians as a profession. It says, searching for information requires the evaluation and the mental flexibility to pursue alternative avenues as new understanding develops. We as librarians had the mental flexibility to adapt to things like Wikipedia when it came on the scene, and to help students understand what it is and what it can be used for. And we can also do that for ChatGPT.
So now we'll talk a little bit about using AI in a one-shot course versus a semester-length course. So the one-shot course will be a little bit of a different experience from using AI in a semester-length course in some ways. Obviously, with a semester-length course, you're going to have more time to deal with the bigger picture concepts, such as generative AI and ethics, and evaluating the results, and developing those critical thinking skills. So you'll have more time to do that. But even with a one-shot, as we talked about in our article, there are many different ways that you can incorporate and introduce the concept of generative AI. Even something as simple such as like having ChatGPT help students to refine their research question, to concept map to help them with generating keywords, synonyms, and related terms, or having ChatGPT generate look for articles and citations. Sometimes they are not always correct. So having students evaluate those can be a really useful strategy. And then when it comes to working with online classes, the way that you incorporate generative AI is going to be fundamentally the same as how you would incorporate it in an in-person class. But you may want to do things like maybe include breakout rooms where students can work together. And you could pop in and out of the rooms to check on things, follow up with a larger group discussion afterward. You might also want to include like a Padlet or a Jamboard where groups or individual students might write out or respond to questions during their time practicing using the generative AI tool. And what I like about doing that is that you can then, not only is it helpful for students to see other students' experiences, but then you can also take that afterwards with you and use that as an assessment tool after the class session. So speaking of a Padlet, we've actually created a Padlet where everyone in the session can add their own ideas for teaching about or with generative AI in the library instruction classroom under the appropriate frames. So generative AI is something that we're all still learning about, and certainly Ellen and I don't consider ourselves experts in this area. We're just learning and playing along with everyone else. So it's good to be able to crowdsource ideas from our peers. So Ellen has put the link in the chat, the one that you see on the screen. So definitely feel free to click on that and, add your experiences to it as well.
So for those of you who mainly teach one-shot instruction sessions and have to engage with faculty who teach those courses, you may be up against some challenges. And so, for example, some of the faculty you encounter are going to be dead set against the idea or against the use of AI or teaching about AI, or perhaps you're at an institution that has a policy or has completely blocked it from the IT or something like that. So I would recommend that in these situations, that basically our job may not just be to educate the students about generative AI, but also to educate the faculty. And so to help with that, there are lots of people who are doing some really great work around this topic that can be of help to us. One resource I recommend is coming soon from the Harvard Meta Lab, and it's called aipedagogy.org. As of last Thursday, there was a big sign on it on the website that said coming soon, fall 2023. As of Friday, it's now requiring a password, so I didn't want to link to it itself. I've linked to the Harvard Meta Lab description of the project. Hopefully that just means it's coming, in the next couple of days. That's my hope. So the link here is for the project description at the Meta Lab, and I will put that in the chat shortly. It's going to be basically a curated collection of assignments, bringing a critical lens to AI built by educators for educators. The Harvard Meta Lab project with the AI pedagogy project is one such of those sources. There's lots of other places that you can find online that are doing that, but this is just one that I know is going to be some really great stuff when it launches.
So now let's talk a little bit about a few other generative AI tools that we have come across that we think could be useful for instruction. The first one is a site called goblin.tools, and it is a collection of small, simple, single task tools, mostly designed to help people with tasks that they might find overwhelming or difficult. And it has a few different options, including the first one you see here, which is the magic to do. It helps users come up with a step-by-step process for an overwhelming task. So this could be really useful for a research paper. For example, if you put into the magic to do box, I need to write a research paper and I am overwhelmed by the process. Goblin.tools will help you come up with the steps that you need to complete the task. It's similar to a research paper planner. It will also estimate the amount of time that it may take for someone to do each task, and it will break down each task accordingly. So you can see the example on the screen where it shows the steps, and then you can click to break down each of those steps into smaller bite-sized pieces. It also has the option of actually incorporating the estimated time over on the right-hand side, as well as in the time estimator tab up at the top. Goblin.tools also has a formalizer, which is the second tab that you see, and that allows you to enter text into the box and then convert it to make it more professional sounding or more polite or less snarky or more socially acceptable and things like that. And then it also has a judge feature that allows you to enter text, and it will help you to decide if you're misreading the tone of something. And it has the brain dump compiler feature, which allows you to put in like a big paragraph of a bunch of things that are on your mind, and then it puts that into a nice bulleted list. And then also, not necessarily education related, but fun for home, it has a chef feature, which allows you to put in a bunch of ingredients and like dietary restrictions, and then it will spit out example recipes that you can make, and you can send those over to the magic to do, and it will put them into the list and tell you how long it might take for each of those.
Another tool that we found that we really like is one called chatpdf.com, and it's a tool that allows you to upload a PDF and then ask questions of it. So the tool analyzes the PDF and creates a semantic index over all the paragraphs. And then when it's answering a question, ChatPDF finds the most relevant paragraphs from the PDF and uses the ChatGPT API. There's so many letters in this ChatGPT API to generate an answer. So we've used this tool to ask it to summarize different sections, explain the methodology. Can you summarize the article at a high school level? We can ask it about, is it using biased language? And things like, is this article peer reviewed? Things like that. So, but there is one thing to note, that the free version of this tool only lets you analyze 2 PDFs a day. So if you wanted to do more than that, that there is a paid, I think it's like $20 a month or something like that, that you would need to pay for that.
So the next one is called teaching.tools, and it's a newer generative AI that is specifically for educators. This may be of use to you if you want help planning and organizing your one shot or longer, class session content that you might have. And so you can, it helps you create your learning objectives and your activities and your assessments and all of that. And then it also has this really amazing active learning library where you can enter filters. And some of the examples of the filters are difficulty level, prep time required, class size, formative feedback, inclusivity, modality, and there's several more as well. And then it will provide you with different simple ways to incorporate an active learning lesson or activity into your class session. And what I like about it too is that it's not discipline specific necessarily. So you can kind of take some of the examples and adapt them to fit what you're working on or which departments you're working with. On the Padlet that we linked, there's also a section where you can add other generative AI tools. I think it's down at the very end on the right. So if you've discovered other tools that you'd like to share, definitely please feel free to link them there. All right, that's what we have for you guys. So thank you so much for your time. Now we'll open up the floor for questions and discussion, and please feel free to reach out to either of us via email after this talk as well. We're happy to chat and answer questions.
I think I saw one question right away. It was, is there a copyright issue with Chat PDF?
That's a good question. I think there's lots of issues surrounding copyright, and I mean the fact that ChatGPT was trained basically on the internet, and there's lots of copyrighted materials that are on the internet. I think I'm assuming Chat PDF is getting around that because you upload your own PDF from your computer to it. But I mean, it's always good to read the terms and conditions of any of the and the privacy issues too. I mean, the fact that they're training themselves again on the stuff that you're entering into these tools as well. So these are things that are, important to seek out and to understand, and then also to help students understand as well. But I haven't specifically known how they address copyright within Chat PDF. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Ellen and Amy. This is great. I'm just looking to see in the chat to see if we have what other questions we have.
I just wanted to say that there's lots of great ideas already on the Padlet, including a link to a tool called perplexity.ai, which I have not heard of before, but looks kind of interesting. I like the name, Perplexity.
Kaylee didn't really have a question. I think it's Kaylee, but she was. They just said that they were asked by several faculty members to integrate various kinds of AI into teaching, ranging from simple generative AI to some of the AI-based research tools. And they agree that the keyword generation prompts work really well and are fun way to talk about library discovery in the catalog and databases. However, they say it's really important to craft the prompts well because AI will default to trying to write the essay for someone. So you don't want them to write the essay, you want them to generate the prompts and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's really important to think about, because I mean, being able to craft prompts well, I think might become a skill that, sort of separates people, right? Like being able to, so this is along with, teaching the critical digital literacy, teaching the skill of how to use these well, right? You really have to play around with it and like keep asking it and getting at, different ways of asking the question that to get the answer that you're looking for. Being able to help students figure out those kinds of those prompts, and maybe that could be an exercise you do in class, right? Have people try out different prompts and see what it comes up with to see what is coming out to be a better response, right?
Yeah, and even just to add to that too, like even just using, using it to help you, if you use it to help you create like your lesson, a lot of the times, like it'll spit out learning objectives, but the verbs that it's using aren't really measurable verbs, or, it doesn't, you have to, in the prompt, tell it how long the class period it is, or otherwise it just makes an assumption that you have like 2 hours, or you have, like way longer than you have. So like Ellen was saying too, I think it's really important to make sure that when you're crafting your prompts, that you're including things and kind of thinking ahead of the game in terms of how you want to word things and what kind of information you want to get back from it. So I just to kind of add to that, I think that's definitely an important point.
I do see that there's a question about in the question and answer. Can I go ahead and address that one, Teresa?
Yes, please
Okay,
do.
it says in one-shots, we're already being asked to teach a lot. Should we negotiate with faculty on how we want to touch this subject? What could be removed from one-shots that AI can substitute? I think so. As I direct our liaison program, and we're always talking about how we engage with our faculty and how we, engage around a lot of different issues, collections, research assistance, and instruction. I think it's really important that we're not just going ahead and doing things without engaging with faculty first and talking with them about what you want to do. And I also think it's super important that when you are introducing any kind of AI, whether it's teaching about it or teaching with it, that it already supports your learning goals, right? You already have figured out what your learning goals are for that one-shot session. And so if your learning goals are to help them figure out how to create good synonyms to do their search, to construct their searches, you could maybe use AI to help them with that, or to support kind of what you're already doing. But rather than just kind of shoehorning in something or dropping something else, I think it really needs to be used to support what your learning goals already are, what learning goals you already have in place, if that makes sense.
I think we have another question in chat that kind of segues into this conversation really well. It says some instructors see use of generative AI as quote unquote cheating. There's a variety of perspectives. How do you negotiate with faculty about what you would include them in one shot around AI kind of within that conversation?
Amy, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I think that the issue, like I mentioned earlier, with obviously AI and ethics, and there's a lot of faculty that are concerned about that. And I think that that's definitely valid. I think, as you're working with your faculty, recognize the validity of that concern, and talk about maybe similar examples like we mentioned with Wikipedia. Like there are ways to use it that are helpful, and there are ways to kind of take advantage of it in it being considered cheating. So I think saying, something like, we don't tell, at least I don't tell students that you can never use Wikipedia. We talk about how to use Wikipedia in a way that is going to be effective, and in a way that's going to be taking you back to the original source and teaching you how to use that tool, to go back to the library's resources to find the original source and to evaluate the source. And the same goes for the generative AI. So I think, saying, I totally understand that this is a concern. I think we're all concerned about the ethics of this and students and cheating and stuff. So I think it's even more important because of that we teach them how to use it effectively, and then talk through like some examples of how you might use it. So if you were doing the concept mapping activity and you were having students use it to help break down the research question and or come up with some synonyms, one thing you could do is you could have students do that, and still include something like having other students review those synonyms and look at and add to them. So it's just a tool that you're teaching them how to use, but not relying on. And that's where I think the biggest difference is like recognizing it, but also saying, because of that, I think it's even more important that we don't ignore it, that we learn how to use it and teach people how to use it. I think that's what, as librarians, what we need to do. So I think, communicating that with faculty, I think it always starts with like recognizing the concern. Isn't that like, it's a customer service 101, right? Like, I totally understand you're concerned about that. So am I. Like, and this is why it's really super important that we work with them to use it, appropriately.
I wanted to tell a story about one time when I used ChatGPT with a student, just in a research consultation. She had it was like the perfect example of, I have this really big research topic. It's for my thesis. How am I supposed to narrow it down? And so we talked, first of all, I talked about all the different strategies I normally would talk about with a student. And we talked about her personal interests, the interest of her instructor or her thesis mentor, all the different kind of, ways that she can go look up background information. She can do a review of the literature just to kind of see kind of what people are talking. I mean, lots of different ways, right? Strategies. And then I said, hey, why don't we just go use ChatGPT for example? And we put the question in there, and ChatGPT actually backed up a lot of what I said. I mean, it said, go talk to your advisor. It said, go review the literature. It talked about all those things. And I think she was kind of like, oh, wow, this is a faculty member who's using ChatGPT with me. And she seemed a little stunned by that. But I mean, I hope it sort of showed her a little bit. It was interesting because she was a person who had to sign a form for a class credit that she met with a librarian, and she had to fill out what she learned and sign and get me to sign it. When she turned it back into me, she did not mention ChatGPT. And I kind of wonder if it was like, I feel weird telling my instructor that this librarian showed ChatGPT to me. There's lots of stuff that's happening right now. People who are wary, people who are excited, students and faculty. I think students might think, oh my gosh, if this person mentioned ChatGPT to me and used it with me, am I going to be considered like I'm cheating or something like that? So it's such new waters that with students and faculty, I think it's always good just to kind of acknowledge these new things, right? So I see there's a question in the question and answer that says, how do you think ChatGPT or AI may influence reference? Do you think we could automate directional questions and such using AI? I think that's really interesting, in that so many times when staffing virtual reference, I've been asked if I'm a robot. I'm sure everyone here who has done that has gotten that question at least once. And I know that there are some tools out there that business has used AI, has used robots for a long time. And I don't see why that couldn't be. There's actually a piece in CNRL this month called How Well Does ChatGPT Handle Reference Inquiries? An analysis based on question types and question complexities, that I would really recommend. I'm going to put that in the chat just so that everyone can take a look at it. So there's some people who are doing some thinking around that as well. There was another piece in CNRL this past month that was looking at just general kind of library workflows with generative AI. So that's also one that I would recommend to. I'll put that in the chat as well, since I have both of these up in my tabs right now. So yeah, I think. And then there's another question in the question and answer that says, does using it also mean contributing to it? You can use Wikipedia without contributing to it. Are there ethical implications to participating in generative AI tools? That's a really interesting question. And I think that's, again, along the lines of where we need to be teaching students. Because yes, when you participate in these, when you use ChatGPT, they're still learning from the kinds of stuff that you're putting in there and the questions you're asking. And so those are the kinds of things that, you need to let students know about. Like, are they willing to be guinea pigs for a generative AI model? Maybe they're not, maybe they are, maybe they're completely fine. But again, that's a matter of, we need to let students know what it is. It's not just an essay generator that I can use to get out of writing my essay. It's what is it doing, and what is it doing when we ask it things, right? So maybe some students would be like, nope, I'm out. Forget it. I'm not going to use this. That's too much of a privacy infringement. Some people might be fine with it, but they need to be educated on it.
So we have a question in the chat. It kind of goes back to one of the previous questions that you answered. As a community college librarian, I have to teach the basics of not just searching databases, but how to do research. How much should I be teaching how AI can do the work for them versus having them understand how to do it themselves?
Well, I'll start off with it. I mean, I don't think that we should be, you know, necessarily saying, oh, well, it can do the work for you. I think that it's important to help them understand like where it gets its information and how it gets its information, how it works, basically like the understanding of how it works, and teaching them how to use it in a way that would be, you know, ethical, unlike, you know, having it write your paper for you. I think it is definitely going to be worthwhile, because it's not, you know, it's not one of those things that's going away anytime soon. Like it's booming. People are using it. People are talking about it. It's one of those things that I think it's important to introduce to students. I think that that's something that we're expected to do as librarians. So I think not, you know, going in and not saying like, look what this thing can do. It can write your whole paper for you. But maybe like talking about how if it does write a paper, what are some of the issues with that? What are problems? What are problematic things that, you know, happen if it writes the essay? How does that, you know, like Ellen said at the very beginning of this, what it is and what it is not. And what it is not is that it is not able to think. It is not a critical thinker. It is taking information that it finds and it is presenting it to you, and it may or may not be factual information. So I think even just showing them examples of some of the pitfalls, the caveats, like the issues with it, so they can see that, you know, rationale and reasoning for, in addition to it's not ethical, why they shouldn't use it in that way, but how they can use it in more effective ways to help them become better critical thinkers, like with the concept mapping, like with having, you know, evaluating, you know, the information that it provides. I think that can really help us with our goals and our objectives as academic librarians in helping people be able to evaluate information and, you know, be critical thinkers. So
there are lots of really interesting, like in order to help students see kind of some of the issues, there's some really interesting quick little ways that you can show. For example, like, you know, one of the ones that I've heard many people talk about is how you know, it's trained on information before 2021, I think it is. And so if you were to ask it about the war in Ukraine, it's going to talk about 2014 and the invasion of Crimea. It's not going to talk about what's happened in the last couple of years. That's one part of it. The other part of it, like you could also do things like, my son really is into chess and he wanted to play chess with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT can come up with some stuff that look like chess notations and chess rules, but it's not looking at a board. It's not, you know, so he tried to play it, and he tried to play it with like an actual chessboard. And he said, well, he just, you know, stomped on this thing that doesn't, or does it, he moved a piece that wasn't in the place that actually he thought it was, you know, all this stuff. There's other examples of things like, for example, if you ask, I've asked it before, how many N's are there in a word? Like how many N's are there in counter? And it says there are 2 N's in counter. Like there's just, I don't understand why it doesn't get that right, but it didn't get that right. And so there's like little small things you can show students that might connect it up with, rather than like trying to understand information in a research sense. Like they understand that like maybe someone plays chess and they understand this doesn't really work, or they can see that no, there are not 2 N's in the word counter, right? So things like that can help them see some of the issues that are going to come up. And it just is in a small way, right, with using something like that.
Really interesting question that has popped some debate or conversation within the chat too is I'm interested in the extent to which systemic injustice is replicated by these tools, and have had some very interesting conversations with students about this. How has everyone else been addressing this issue? There's been some conversation going on in the chat, but I was wondering if that's come up with any of the work you all have done.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I think that Ellen and I, when we started working on the article, actually had a discussion about the you know, lack of you know, when you're asking it for authors, or you're asking it to provide you with a sample of, you know, like a list of people in a particular category or whatever, like, oh, tell me some of the best musicians from this era or whatever, tell me some of the best, like it is not necessarily representing a variety of different types of people from different types of places. And so I definitely think that is a concern that a lot of people have about, that you don't want to just get a list of, a whole bunch of white men, so how do you, and I don't know that I don't have an answer for that. Like I said, I'm not necessarily an expert on this, but I definitely, like all of you, have seen those issues come up as I have been using the tool. So I do think it's definitely something, just like we talk, as we're talking with students about, bringing issues of, trying to critical information literacy, right? Like trying to bring in those types of concepts into the library instruction classroom as they're looking for articles in our databases, right? Like it's important for us to share with them that, we need to be thinking about these things as we're using these tools, whether it's this tool or whether it's, any other, like a library database, that you have to be aware of that and cognizant of that and actively trying to seek that out. And so I think, it's just another indication of how important it is for us to use this with our students and talk about those inherent issues that are absolutely there. So that's how I would respond to that.
So we have another question. So somebody asked, is it like, are these generative AI connected to the internet now? Several versions are. So like, I think the ChatGPT-3, is that one go back to like 2021, but newer like 4 that you pay for, is that connected like to everything now, or do they still use like a data set?
Do you know the answer to that, Amy? I have not paid for ChatGPT-4, so
I
I'm
haven't.
not sure.
I haven't either. I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, someone on chat says
yeah.
ChatGPT-4 is connected only through the Bing search engine. I have tried out the Bing search engine a little bit. I was very reluctant to at the beginning because I'm a Chrome user, but I know that Bing does use the current internet when it's generating its answers. So yeah. There's some interesting stuff in the on the Padlet where someone said for information creation as a process, a example of an assignment would be to students write their own summary of a paper and then compare their summaries to an AI summary. And then someone else responded and said that a professor at NCSU did a similar project, and there was a spot on WUNC about it. So I'm going to put that link because that's a very interesting thing. When back in late last year, when it was ChatGPT was really blowing up, I found the most interesting uses of ChatGPT in the classroom were being provided by, basically, I don't know if you would call them like social media teacher influencers, like teachers in high schools on TikTok. Basically, they were coming up with the most interesting ways of using it. I saw one person who had instructed or had taken their prompt for their essay about Hamlet or whatever it was, and ran it through ChatGPT, and then stripped out like a bunch of parts of maybe the problematic parts of the essay that it generated, and gave it to the students to kind of fill in, like, you add your own pieces to this. And she said a lot of students were found it interesting. She said some students complained that they felt too boxed in with using it, just filling in the blanks on this thing. And the teacher said, well, yeah, because you always wander off in your writing, and this is constraining you and kind of teaching you and guiding your writing. And so there's some really interesting, especially on, I would say, this sort of high school English teacher, social media influencer space, where they're doing some really great stuff. And again, lots of people are doing, that. I'm really hoping that AIpedagogy.org is not down. I hope it means it's coming soon. I hope some of you may have gone to that website and seen that it's kind of asking for a password right now, but it's going to be a really great curated collection of assignments about using it. And you know, these kinds of things, I'm hoping will start to end up in our disciplinary teaching repositories like the ACRL Framework Sandbox. What are the other ones, Amy? They're leaving my brain right now, but I know you know them all.
Yeah, well, there's Cora, there's Project Cora, there's Carly, there's well, of course, all of the companion, the companion documents to the framework that are currently published online have activities sections where there's different ideas for activities. So all of those could definitely be places that you could put those kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that those are going to start getting, populated with more assignments and exercises that use AI or talk about AI.
Yeah.
So,
and there's also like Primo and
yeah,
there's so many.
There's another question. What are the expectations of students to use AI when a lot of have paid access, they have an account that's required, and the students may be reluctant to pay, especially for service when they may not have money to pay for an internet connection. So do you think it's going to be the point where they're going to be required, or is this going to always be something kind of like?
Well,
that's a good question.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, that's always, an issue when it comes to digital things, with the digital divide. And there's always going to be people who don't have access to, internet. In terms of like, I know that there's a free version that you do need an account for. And that was that's the issue. Like if you're in, a class and somebody doesn't have, want to necessarily create the account, that could definitely be a concern. But in terms of the payment, I think there's a lot of them that are, more freely available. But in terms of accessing, I could definitely see, that, either public library support if there's people that are in more rural places, like, because there's a lot of people have to go to public libraries to access computers and or an academic, at the academic library itself. Of course, we have lots and lots of people that are online students that have to find internet access to get on their classes. But I think that it becomes more important too that we kind of band together with other with public libraries and other entities that are able to provide internet access to people in all different kinds of places where it may be more challenging to access the internet.
I mean, it seems right now that a lot of these tools have kind of like the freemium kind of access point where, you can do a certain amount that's free. I hope that continues to be the case so that people can, I don't want it to be the case again where the people who are able to access these tools are going to then be more, hireable in the market later if they're able, it's just going to cause lots of stratification and people who are, because you have to access them to be able to practice and to get better and to figure out how to use them. And someone does put in the comments that I think we'll always have a free version to collect more data. And again, that's where, again, those privacy issues come about, where they're just going to be collecting data from the responses that you're giving and the questions that you're asking. So I don't know if they're, I know of a professor here at our institution who has required his class to use ChatGPT 4, which is paid. So I don't know if that was something that he put in the syllabus ahead of time, like you're going to have to subscribe to this, at least for the time period of the classroom, or whether he provided that out of his own budget. I don't know. But he is actually, one of his purposes of his class was to learn about AI specifically. So that was, it's going to be a part of it.
Being cognizant of everyone's time, I haven't seen any chat, questions in chat. So give them a minute to type any last questions in. See, Vicky,
Ellen, Do you know if the chat will be saved? Because I've missed a lot of stuff going through and I really want to go back and read them.
I will
Some
shoot.
of the comments.
Leah, if you can hear me, do you know?
I can hear you. We can download the transcript, I believe. I will double check, but I'm pretty sure. When I send out the link for the video on YouTube, and send out the transcript.
Perfect.
Yeah, there are
Thank you.
lots of really
Awesome.
great comments that were coming through. I know everyone's, you know, like we had said in the thing that, you know, we're playing with this and experimenting with it, and just like a lot of people are. And so it's really great to get everyone's hive mind about how they're using it, which is why we started the Padlet as well. Lots of really great stuff on there. Lots of really other good tools that people have used. Illicit.com, Claude.ai, library.
I'm excited to
with an
check those
i.com.
out.
Yeah, me too. So,
Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
yeah.
Yeah, so with all that being said, I want to thank our presenters again, Ellen and Amy. This was really fantastic today. I learned a ton. And I think everyone, it looks like from chat did as well. It was a super active chat. I really enjoyed reading through it as well. It was a great conversation. So I'm really glad that's going to be saved too. But thank you again for joining us this afternoon and or morning, depending on your time zone. We really appreciate it. The DOLS ACRL Instruction Committee. Thanks you for joining us for AI in academic libraries, teaching and learning. We'll stay around for just another minute or two, but just being respectful for everyone's time. Yeah, thank you again, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so
guys.
much.
Really